Once upon a time, in a small village called Udo, nestled by the great River Oshun, there lived a kind-hearted fisherman named Adebayo. Though he wasn't rich, Adebayo had a loving family that brought joy to his life. Every day, he would wake up before the sun rose and head to the river to catch fish. His wife, Folak, was a hard-working woman who sold colorful beads in the village market. Adebayo and Folak had 3 children, 2 boys named Chidi and Emeka, and a beautiful daughter named Amara. Despite their simple life, the family was happy and content. They didn't have much money, but their small mud hut was always filled with laughter and love. In the evenings, after a long day of fishing, Adebayo would return home tired but happy. Folak would welcome him with a warm bowl of fufu and spicy soup, while the children would run to hug him. They would sit together on woven mats, share stories, and enjoy each other's company under the starry sky. Life in Udo village was simple but good. The villagers farmed yams, cassava, and plantains. They fished in the river and traded goods in the bustling market. Children played games with sticks and stones, their laughter echoing through the village. Elders told stories under the big baobab tree, passing down wisdom from one generation to the next. Adebayo was known in the village for his kindness and hard work. He often helped his neighbors mend their fishing nets or shared his catch with families in need. But as time passed, Adebayo noticed that some of his wealthier friends began to treat him differently. One day there was a big festival in the village to celebrate the yam harvest. Everyone was excited, wearing their best clothes and preparing delicious foods. Adebayo went to the festival, hoping to enjoy time with his old friends. When he arrived, he saw his friends laughing and eating together. They invited him to join them, and Adebayo sat down happily. But after they finished eating, something happened that made Adebayo very sad. One of his friends, a man named Okonkwo, stood up and said, "Adebayo, since you are the poorest among us, you should clean up our dirty dishes." Adebayo was shocked. He said, "But we are all friends. Just because I don't have as much money as you doesn't mean you can treat me this way. Everyone should clean up after themselves." But his friends laughed and said, "If you don't clean up, we'll tell everyone you didn't pay for your food. That will be even more embarrassing for you." Adebayo had no choice. With a heavy heart, he cleaned up, while his friends continued to laugh and enjoy the festival. He walked home slowly, feeling very sad and hurt. When he got home, Folak noticed he was upset and asked, "Adebayo, what's wrong? Didn't you enjoy the festival?" Adebayo sighed and replied, "My friends treated me badly today because we don't have much money. But it doesn't matter. I will always do my best for you and our children." Folak hugged him and said, "Don't let their words hurt you. We may not be rich, but we have love, and that's worth more than all the money in the world." Adebayo nodded, feeling a little better. He knew that his family's love was the greatest treasure he could ever have. Days passed, and Adebayo continued to work hard. He would wake up early every morning, take his old canoe, and paddle out into the river. Sometimes the fish were plentiful, and he would return with a big catch. Other days, he would spend hours under the hot sun, only to come back with a few small fish. One day, as Adebayo was fishing in a quiet part of the river, he noticed something strange. The water began to sparkle in an unusual way, and he heard a soft, melodious sound coming from beneath the surface. Curious, he leaned over the side of his canoe to get a better look. Suddenly, a beautiful face emerged from the water. It was a mermaid. Her skin shimmered like the scales of a fish, and her long hair flowed like seaweed in the current. Adebayo was so surprised that he nearly fell out of his canoe. The mermaid smiled at him and said, "Hello, kind fisherman. I've been watching you for many days. You work so hard, yet you struggle to provide for your family. I want to help you." Adebayo, still in shock, managed to stammer, "Help me? But how? And why would you want to help me?" The mermaid's eyes twinkled as she replied, "I have the power to grant you great wealth. All you need to do is make a simple promise." Adebayo's heart raced. The thought of being able to provide a better life for his family was tempting, but he was also cautious. His parents had always taught him to be wary of things that seemed too good to be true. What kind of promise? he asked hesitantly. The mermaid's smile widened. Promise me that you will return to this spot in the river exactly 1 year from today. When you do, I will ask you to perform a small task for me. If you complete this task, your wealth will continue to grow. If you refuse, you will lose everything. Adebayo thought hard about the mermaid's offer. On one hand, it seemed like a dream come true. He could finally give his family the life they deserved. On the other hand, he worried about what this mysterious task might be. After a long moment of silence, Adebayo made his decision. I accept your offer, he said. I promise to return in 1 year. The mermaid clapped her hands with delight. Wonderful! Now close your eyes and count to 10. When you open them, your new life will begin. Adebayo did as he was told. He closed his eyes and counted slowly. 1, 2, 3. As he counted, he felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. 8, 9, 10. When he opened his eyes, the mermaid was gone. At first, Adebayo thought nothing had changed, but as he looked down into his canoe, he gasped. It was filled to the brim with fish, more than he had ever caught in a single day. Excited, Adebayo paddled back to shore as fast as he could. When he arrived at the market, everyone was amazed by his incredible catch. He sold all the fish quickly and returned home with more money than he had ever made before. Folak was overjoyed when she saw the money. Adebayo, how did you catch so many fish? She asked, her eyes wide with surprise. Adebayo hesitated for a moment. He wasn't sure if he should tell her about the mermaid. I found a new fishing spot, he said finally. It seems to be very lucky. In the days that followed, Adebayo's luck continued to improve. Every time he went fishing, he returned with an abundance of fish. Soon, he had enough money to buy a bigger boat and better fishing nets. He was able to catch even more fish, and his wealth grew rapidly. The family's life began to change. They moved from their small mud hut into a larger, more comfortable house. Chidi and Emeka were able to go to school, and Amara got beautiful new dresses. Folak no longer had to sell beads in the market. Instead, she could stay home and take care of their new house. As Adebayo's wealth increased, the attitudes of the villagers towards him changed. The friends who had once looked down on him now sought his company. They invited him to parties and asked for his advice on business matters. Okonkwo, who had humiliated him at the festival, now treated him with great respect. At first, Adebayo enjoyed his new status. He liked being able to help others in the village who were struggling. He donated money to build a new school and helped several families repair their homes after a big storm. But as the months passed, Adebayo began to feel uneasy. He noticed that some people only seemed to like him for his money. The genuine friendships he once had seemed to have disappeared. Even worse, he found himself becoming more and more focused on wealth and less on the simple joys that had once made him happy. One evening, as the family sat down to eat dinner, Folak noticed that Adebayo seemed distracted. "What's wrong, my love?" she asked. "You've barely touched your food." Adebayo sighed heavily. "I'm worried," he admitted. "Our lives have changed so much in the past year. Sometimes I wonder if it's all for the better." Folak reached out and took his hand. "I've noticed changes in you too," she said softly. "You seem more worried, less happy. Is there something you're not telling me?" Adebayo looked into his wife's eyes and saw the love and concern there. He realized that he couldn't keep the secret any longer. Taking a deep breath, he told her everything about the mermaid, the promise he made, and the task he would have to perform in just a few days. Folak listened quietly, her face growing more concerned with each word. When Adebayo finished, she said, "Oh, my dear husband, I understand why you did this, but I'm afraid. Nothing good ever comes from deals with magical creatures. We were happy before, even if we didn't have much money. Our love for each other was enough." Adebayo nodded, feeling a mixture of relief at sharing his secret and fear of what was to come. "You're right," he said. "But what can I do now? If I don't meet the mermaid and perform her task, we'll lose everything." Folak squeezed his hand. "We'll face this together," she said firmly. "Whatever happens, we have each other. That's what really matters." The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Adebayo tried to spend as much time as possible with his family, knowing that everything might change after his meeting with the mermaid. Finally, the day arrived. Early in the morning, before the sun had risen, Adebayo kissed his sleeping wife and children goodbye. He walked down to the river, his heart heavy with dread. As he approached the spot where he had first met the mermaid, he saw the water begin to sparkle, just as it had a year ago. The mermaid's beautiful face emerged from the water, her smile as dazzling as ever. "Greetings, Adebayo," she said. "I'm glad to see you've kept your promise. Are you ready to perform the task I have for you?" Adebayo nodded, his mouth dry with fear. "Yes," he managed to say. "What must I do?" The mermaid's smile widened, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. "It's simple," she said. "To keep your wealth and gain even more, you must sacrifice your daughter Amara to the river spirits." Adebayo felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "No!" he cried out. "I can't do that! Amara is my child, my own flesh and blood. I won't harm her!" The mermaid's eyes flashed with anger. "You made a promise, Adebayo. If you break it, you will lose everything. Your wealth, your sanity, even your life. The choice is yours." Tears streamed down Adebayo's face as he realized the terrible mistake he had made. In his desire for wealth, he had put his beloved daughter in danger. "I won't do it," he said firmly. "I'd rather be poor than harm my child. Take back your wealth. My family's love is worth more than all the riches in the world." The mermaid's beautiful face twisted into an ugly snarl. "You fool!" she hissed. "You'll regret this decision." With a splash, she disappeared beneath the water. Suddenly, Adebayo felt a searing pain in his head. Strange visions flashed before his eyes. Piles of gold turning to sand, his family disappearing into mist. He fell to his knees, clutching his head and crying out in agony. The commotion attracted the attention of some early rising villagers. They found Adebayo thrashing on the ground, muttering about mermaids and wealth. Concerned, they carried him back to his house. Folklore was horrified to see her husband in such a state. She sent Chidi to fetch the village healer while she tried to comfort Adebayo. But no matter what she did, he continued to babble incoherently, his eyes wild with fear and confusion. The village healer arrived quickly. After examining Adebayo, she shook her head gravely. "This is no ordinary illness," she said. "It seems that dark magic has touched him. We must act quickly to save him." Word spread rapidly through the village about Adebayo's condition. Many were shocked to see the once prosperous man reduced to such a pitiful state. Some whispered that it was punishment for his sudden wealth, while others feared that an evil spirit had possessed him. As the day wore on, more and more villagers gathered outside Adebayo's house. They were concerned for him, but also afraid. What if the evil that had struck him could spread to others? Inside the house, Folklore watched over her husband with tears in her eyes. The children huddled in a corner, scared and confused. The healer had tried various remedies, but nothing seemed to help. As night fell, an old woman named Mama Zainab pushed her way through the crowd. She was known in the village for her wisdom and knowledge of ancient traditions. "Let me see him," she said firmly. Mama Zainab examined Adebayo closely, listening to his ramblings and observing his movements. After a while, she stood up and addressed the gathered villagers. "I know what ails this man," she announced. "He has been cursed by a river spirit, a mermaid. The only way to save him is to capture the mermaid and force her to remove the curse." A murmur ran through the crowd. Capture a mermaid? It seemed impossible, but Mama Zainab wasn't finished. "We must lure the mermaid out of the water," she continued. "Once she's on land, she will lose her power. Then we must pound her in a large mortar until she agrees to lift the curse." The villagers were shocked by this violent suggestion. Pound a mermaid? It seemed cruel and unusual. But as they looked at Adebayo, still writhing and muttering on his bed, they realized they had no other choice. Under Mama Zainab's guidance, the villagers began to prepare. They gathered ropes and nets, and a group of strong men carried a large wooden mortar down to the riverbank. Folklore stayed behind with the children, praying for her husband's recovery. As midnight approached, the villagers hid themselves along the riverbank. Mama Zainab stood at the water's edge, chanting in an ancient language and dropping various herbs and powders into the river. For a long time, nothing happened. The villagers waited in tense silence, some beginning to doubt whether this plan would work. But just as the moon reached its highest point in the sky, the water began to glow. Slowly, gracefully, a figure rose from the river. It was the mermaid, her beauty even more stunning under the moonlight. She looked around curiously, drawn by Mama Zainab's chanting. As soon as the mermaid's tail left the water, Mama Zainab shouted, "Now!" The villagers sprang into action. They threw nets over the surprised mermaid, who thrashed and fought with incredible strength. It took 10 strong men to subdue her and carry her to the mortar. The mermaid screeched and wailed as they lowered her into the mortar. Her cries were so piercing that some villagers had to cover their ears. But Mama Zainab was relentless. "Pound!" she commanded. "Pound until she agrees to lift the curse." 2 burly men took up large pestles and began to pound. The mermaid's screams grew louder, and a strange mist began to rise from the mortar. The villagers watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. As the pounding continued, the mermaid's cries changed from anger to pain to desperation. Finally, after what seemed like hours, she cried out, "Stop! I'll remove the curse! Just stop pounding me!" Mama Zainab held up her hand, and the pounding ceased. She leaned over the mortar and said sternly, "Swear by the ancient laws of river and land that you will remove the curse from Adebayo and never trouble him or this village again." The mermaid, her once beautiful face now bruised and swollen, nodded weakly. "I swear," she gasped, "by the ancient laws of river and land to remove the curse from Adebayo and never trouble him or this village again." As soon as the words left her mouth, a bright light flashed, momentarily blinding everyone. When they could see again, the mortar was empty. The mermaid had vanished. A hush fell over the crowd. Had it worked? Would Adebayo be cured? Suddenly a shout came from the direction of Adebayo's house. It was Chidi, running towards them, with a look of joy on his face. "That's happened," he cried. "He's back to normal." A cheer went up from the villagers. They rushed back to Adebayo's house, where they found him sitting up in bed, looking tired but clear-eyed. Folak was by his side, tears of happiness streaming down her face. Adebayo looked around in confusion. "What happened?" he asked. "The last thing I remember is being by the river." As the villagers celebrated Adebayo's recovery, Mama Zainab stepped forward. "You were cursed by a river spirit," she explained gently. "But that's over now. You're safe, and the spirit will never bother you again." Adebayo nodded slowly, memories of his encounter with the mermaid flooding back. He turned to Folak and his children, pulling them into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I put our family in danger because of my greed. Can you forgive me?" Folak kissed him softly. "There's nothing to forgive," she said. "You're back with us, and that's all that matters." As the excitement died down and the villagers began to disperse, Adebayo noticed something. The fine clothes he had been wearing, bought with his magical wealth, had turned to rags. The grand house they had been living in was once again their humble mud hut. But strangely, Adebayo didn't feel sad about this loss. Instead, he felt a great weight lift from his shoulders. He realized that the wealth had been a burden, changing him in ways he didn't like and putting a strain on his relationships. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal for Adebayo and his family. He went back to fishing, working hard but content with what he could provide. Folak returned to selling her beads in the market, and the children helped out where they could. The villagers, who had come together to save Adebayo, now looked at him with newfound respect. They admired his humility and his dedication to his family. Even those who had once looked down on him for being poor now sought his friendship, recognizing that true wealth lay in kindness and community. One evening, as the family sat together outside their hut, enjoying the cool breeze and the sounds of the village settling down for the night, Adebayo spoke up. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything that's happened, and I've realized something important." His family looked at him curiously. waiting for him to continue. "We may not have much money," Adebayo said, "but we're rich in ways that matter most. We have each other, we have our health, and we have the support of our community. That's worth more than all the gold in the world." Folak squeezed his hand, smiling. "You're right," she said, "and I wouldn't trade what we have for anything." Chidi, Emeka, and Amara nodded in agreement, snuggling closer to their parents. As they sat there, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together, Adebayo felt a deep sense of contentment wash over him. He had learned a valuable lesson about the true meaning of wealth, and he vowed never to forget it. From that day on, Adebayo worked hard, but always made time for his family and friends. He became known in the village as a man of wisdom, often sharing his story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the importance of appreciating what you have. And though they never became rich in the traditional sense, Adebayo and his family lived a life filled with love, laughter, and joy, the greatest treasures of all. Years passed, and the story of Adebayo and the mermaid became a popular tale in Udo village. Parents would tell it to their children as a lesson about the dangers of greed and the importance of family and community. Adebayo's children grew up to be kind and hard-working adults. Chidi became a skilled fisherman like his father, while Emeka discovered a talent for wood carving and began creating beautiful sculptures that were sought after in neighboring villages. Amara, with her mother's guidance, became an expert beadmaker, creating intricate designs that told stories of their village's history. As for Adebayo and Folak, they grew old together, surrounded by love and respect. Their home, though still humble, was always open to anyone in need of advice or a warm meal. One day, many years after the incident with the mermaid, a group of children gathered around Adebayo as he sat under the old baobab tree in the center of the village. "Baba Adebayo," one of the children asked, "tell us again about the mermaid and how the village saved you." Adebayo chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ah, that's a long story," he said. "Are you sure you want to hear it again?" "Yes, please," the children chorused, settling down eagerly. Adebayo cleared his throat and began, "Once upon a time, in our very own village of Udo, there lived a foolish fisherman who thought that money could buy happiness." As he told the story, Adebayo noticed a few adults lingering nearby, listening just as intently as the children. Some of them had been there that night when the villagers pounded the mermaid, while others were too young to remember it themselves. When he finished, one of the older children spoke up. "Baba Adebayo," she said thoughtfully, "what do you think happened to the mermaid after she disappeared?" Adebayo stroked his grey beard, considering the question. "That's a good question, child," he said. "I like to think that she learned a lesson too. Perhaps she realized that trying to trick humans would only lead to trouble for everyone." "Do you think she's still out there in the river?" a little boy asked, his eyes wide. Adebayo smiled gently. "The river is full of mysteries, my child. But remember, not all that glitters is gold. The most precious things in life are the ones you can't see or touch, like love, friendship, and kindness." As the children nodded, taking in his words, Adebayo noticed Folak approaching. Even after all these years, the sight of her still made his heart skip a beat. "Come, my love," Folak said, reaching out her hand. "It's time for dinner." Adebayo took her hand and slowly stood up, his joints creaking a bit. "Run along now, children," he said. "Remember the story, and always be grateful for what you have." As Adebayo and Folak walked home hand in hand, he reflected on the journey of his life. The adventure with the mermaid seemed like a distant dream now, but the lessons he learned from it had shaped the rest of his days. He looked at Folak, her face lined with age, but still beautiful to him, and squeezed her hand. "You know," he said softly, "I thank the river spirits every day for you and our family. You are the real treasure I found in this life." Folak smiled up at him, her eyes shining with love. "And you are mine," she replied. As they entered their humble home, filled with the aroma of Folak's cooking and the happy chatter of their grandchildren who had come to visit, Adebayo felt a warmth in his heart that no amount of gold could ever match. He knew that this simple life full of love and contentment was the true happy ending to his story. And as he looked around at his family, he silently renewed his vow to always cherish what really mattered in life. The tale of Adebayo and the Mermaid continued to be told in Udo village for generations to come. It became more than just a story. It was a reminder of the village's unity, the power of forgiveness, and the true meaning of wealth. As years turned into decades, the village of Udo grew and changed. New houses were built, roads were paved, and modern conveniences slowly made their way into daily life. But some things remained constant: the importance of family, the strength of community, and the wisdom passed down through stories like Adebayo's. Long after Adebayo and Folak had passed on, their descendants continued to live in the village, carrying on their legacy of kindness and hard work. The old mud hut where they had lived was preserved as a reminder of simpler times, and it became a place where villagers would gather to share stories and remember their history. The river, once a source of fear and mystery after the incident with the mermaid, became a symbol of the village's resilience. Children would play on its banks, fishermen would cast their nets, and on special occasions, the whole village would gather there for festivals and celebrations. During these festivals, there was always a special ceremony to honor the memory of Adebayo and the lessons he had taught. People would cast flowers into the river, not as an offering to any spirits, but as a symbol of letting go of greed and embracing the simple joys of life. As for the mermaid, no one ever saw her again. But on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the river was calm, some swore they could hear a faint melodious sound coming from the water. Not a tempting call, but a gentle reminder of the power of forgiveness and the importance of staying true to oneself. The story of Adebayo and the mermaid traveled beyond the borders of Udo village, carried by traders and travelers to distant lands. In each retelling, the details might change slightly, but the heart of the story remained the same. A tale of a man who learned that true wealth lies not in gold or magic, but in the love of family and the strength of community. And so, in this way, Adebayo's simple wisdom continued to touch lives and change hearts, proving that sometimes the most powerful magic of all is the ability to learn from our mistakes and cherish what truly matters. As the world outside Udo village continued to change and grow, the lessons from Adebayo's story remained as relevant as ever. In a time when people often chased after material wealth and instant gratification, the tale served as a gentle reminder to slow down and appreciate the simple things in life. Visitors to Udo village would often comment on the special atmosphere they felt there, a sense of peace and contentment that seemed to permeate the air. Many attributed this to the enduring legacy of Adebayo's story and the values it had instilled in generation after generation. In schools, teachers would use the story to teach children about integrity, the dangers of greed, and the importance of community. Young students would act out the tale in plays, their faces painted to represent the villagers, Adebayo, and even the mermaid. Artists found inspiration in the story too. Beautiful murals depicting scenes from Adebayo's adventure began to appear on walls throughout the village. Woodcarvers, inspired by Emeka's talent, created intricate sculptures of mermaids and fishermen. Beadmakers, following in Amara's footsteps, wove complex patterns that told the story in tiny, colorful spheres. As technology advanced and the world became more connected, the story of Adebayo and the mermaid found new life on the internet. Social media posts recounting the tale went viral, spreading the wisdom of Udo village to people in far-flung corners of the globe. Some skeptics dismissed it as just another folk tale, but many found resonance in its simple yet profound message. In a world often driven by the pursuit of wealth and status, Adebayo's story reminded people of what truly mattered: love, family, community, and integrity. Environmental groups even adopted the tale as a metaphor for humanity's relationship with nature, using it to promote respect for rivers and oceans. The image of the mermaid, once a symbol of temptation, was transformed into a representation of the delicate balance between humans and the natural world. In Udo village itself, the legacy of Adebayo's experience continued to shape daily life. The villagers maintained a healthy respect for the river, appreciating its bounty, but never taking more than they needed. They looked out for one another, understanding that the strength of their community was their greatest asset. Each year, on the anniversary of the night when the villagers pounded the Mermaid, a special festival was held. Unlike the raucous celebrations of the past, this was a quieter, more reflective event. Villagers would gather by the riverside at sunset, sharing food and stories. As darkness fell, they would light candles and set them afloat on the river, not as an offering to any spirit, but as a symbol of the light of wisdom and the warmth of community that Adebayo's story had kindled in their hearts. During this festival, the eldest member of Adebayo's family would retell the story. As the tale unfolded, you could see its impact on the faces of those listening, the children wide-eyed with wonder, the adults nodding in understanding, the elders smiling in quiet reflection. And so, the story lived on, not just as words passed down through generations, but as a guiding philosophy that shaped the character of Udo village and touched the lives of people far beyond its borders. In this way, Adebayo, the simple fisherman who had learned an extraordinary lesson, continued to make a difference in the world. His legacy served as a reminder that every person, no matter how humble their beginnings, has the power to create a lasting impact through the choices they make and the values they uphold. As the candles floated down the river, their light glimmering on the water, it was as if Adebayo's wisdom was being carried out into the world, touching hearts and illuminating minds with its simple yet profound truth that the greatest wealth of all is a life rich in love, integrity, and community. And so, the story of Adebayo and the Mermaid continues to be told, its message echoing across time and distance, reminding us all of what truly matters in this grand adventure we call life.